In what may be the most horrifying story we've gotten yet from the coronavirus pandemic, New York recently announced that they're going to be temporarily burying the dead in New York City parks. Now, this may be contradicted by a spokesperson, but considering I don't necessarily trust the media right now, we've got a direct statement from a New York health official saying they're going to do this, but then we have BuzzFeed saying a spokesperson has denied it. So we'll try and figure out what's really happening. The New York Post reports New York City to begin temporarily burying coronavirus victims in local parks. Now, to avoid, I'm going to go straight to the tweets here. This is Mark D. Levin. He is the chair of New York City Council Health Committee, representing District 7. He tweeted, New York City's healthcare system is being pushed to the limit. And sadly, now so is the city's system for managing our dead. And it too needs more resources. This has big implications for grieving families and for all of us. New York City's city morgue is the office of the chief medical examiner, which luckily is the best in the world. He says, but they are now dealing with the equivalent of an ongoing 9/11, and so are hospital morgues, funeral homes, and cemeteries. Every part of this system is now backed up. A typical hospital morgue might hold 15 bodies. Those are now all full. So OCME has sent out 80 refrigerated trailers to hospitals around the city. Each trailer can hold 100 bodies. These are now mostly full too. Some hospitals have had to add a second or even a third trailer. Grieving families report calling as many as half a dozen funeral homes and finding none that can handle their deceased loved ones. Cemeteries are not able to handle the number of burial requests and are turning most down. It's not just the deaths in the hospitals which are up. On an average day before the crisis, there were 20 to 25 deaths at home in New York City. Now, in the midst of this pandemic, the number is 200 to 215 every day. Early on in this crisis, we were able to swab people who died at home and thus got a coronavirus reading. But those days are long gone. We simply don't have the testing capacity for the large number dying at home. So, wow, 200 dying at home every day. That's insane. Now only those few who had a test confirmation before dying are marked as victims of coronavirus on their death certificate. This almost certainly means we are undercounting the total number of victims of this pandemic. And still, the number of bodies continues to increase. The freezers at OCME facilities in Manhattan and Brooklyn will soon be full, and then what? Soon we'll start temporary internment. This likely will be done using a New York City park for burials. Yes, you read that right. Trenches will be dug for 10 caskets in a line. It will be done in a dignified, orderly, and temporary manner, but it will be tough for New Yorkers to take. The goal is to avoid scenes like those in Italy, where the military was forced to collect bodies from churches and even off the streets. OCME is going to need much more staff to achieve that goal. Thankfully, the Department of Defense and the New York National Guard have already sent teams, and volunteer medical examiners have come from around the country. But we are going to need much more help if we're going to avoid disaster. As New York City continues to appeal to the nation for help, we need to ask not just for doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists. We also need mortuary affairs staff. This is tough to talk about and maybe tough to ask for, but we have no choice. The stakes are too high. To recap, nothing matters more in this crisis than saving the living. But we need to face the gruesome reality that we need more resources to manage our dead as well, or the pain of this crisis will be compounded almost beyond comprehension. So Mark D. Levin, chair of New York City Council Health Committee, this is what he has said so far. Perhaps he's saying maybe that's what we'll do. I'm not entirely sure. He straight up says, soon we'll start temporary internment. This likely will be done by using a New York City park for burials. Yes, you read that right. Trenches will be dug. It will be done in a dignified, orderly, temporary manner. But now we have an update here. Whether you want to trust it or not, I'm sorry to say I don't trust BuzzFeed News all that much. I used to give him much more credit. Tasneem N., verified BuzzFeed News reporter, says, spokesperson for the New York City Chief of Medical Examiner tells me there is currently no plan to inter at city parks at this time. This is in response to the possibility of using New York City parks as temporary burial sites during surge in COVID-19 related deaths. And then we have this. HHS DMORT teams which are in New York City to staff collection points to temporarily hold bodies until funeral homes and morgues can accommodate them, are not involved in any planning for temporary burials in the parks. I don't know who to believe, but I'll tell you what. If it comes straight from Mark D. Levin, who is a government official, I'm going to take that over a spokesperson or BuzzFeed News. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. Now, listen, there's a couple things I'm going to point out as we move on. We've got problems with media and politics. I'll just put it that way. The politicization of all of this. Take a look at this story. New York City councilman. Coronavirus closure decision weighs major costs against public health risks. This is New York City councilman Mark Levin said health officials have to consider the ripple effects of any decision to close schools or implement travel restrictions. It's from March 11th. We can see that nobody predicted this. And even going back to March 11th, there was concerns about what the repercussions would be for shutting down the economy. The reason I bring this up is that we are currently at a point where you have two things that are they're kind of the same thing happening. The virtue signaling of the media and the left is a desperate attempt to constantly one-up each other so they can earn points, get clicks, and get traffic or whatever. The reality is nobody knew. Mark Levin, however, has been heavily criticized for a few reasons. Back in February, he tweeted this on February 9th. In a powerful show of defiance of coronavirus scare, huge crowds gathering in New York City's Chinatown for ceremony ahead of annual Lunar New Year parade. Chants of Be Strong Wuhan. If you are staying away, you are missing out. Tons of photos of people celebrating. Why is it so bad in New York that Mark had to just announce they may bury the dead in New York City parks? And it's being reported far and wide in the press. Well, it's because Bill de Blasio, it's because Mark Levin encouraged people to go into big gatherings. And it's because even when we saw this coming and getting bad, they were still contemplating whether or not a shutdown made sense. And even when Bill de Blasio started saying that maybe we want to do this, Andrew Cuomo, governor, said, get real, and they didn't want to do it. The media would have you believe, though, and the virtue signalers, that Trump is to blame for everything. Trump has maintained the federal government as a backup for the states. But this is all of the political game. It's all part of this political game. It's all part of the social media game. There's a viral tweet right now where some representative is claiming they're going to recommend some kind of international criminal charges for Trump at The Hague in the Netherlands. Spare me. That's ridiculous. They'd have no jurisdiction over Trump. That makes no sense. But of course, then you see the other resistance, virtue signalers trying to one-up everyone else. In response to this, some guy tweeted something to the effect of, as a career prosecutor, I can see that Trump is clearly, he's clearly broken involuntary manslaughter laws, blah, blah, blah. Why would it be Donald Trump's fault? He's the president of the United States. He took action in January, and it was Mark Levin and it was Bill de Blasio who are downplaying this. I don't think it's fair to necessarily criticize either of them. I think the media is playing games to earn some kind of points, to get clicks, to make money, and it's unfair. It's unfair to a certain degree to criticize everybody. Now, Bill de Blasio really did resist for a long time. And and Joe Biden, for instance. So we did see Democrats and media across the board. They're now turning that around, trying to point the finger at Fox News and conservatives, saying they downplayed it. I don't want to hear it. I really don't. We're talking about a guy who's saying we might start burying the dead in a New York City park. I'll tell you, these cities are in really, really bad shape. If you are in one of these big cities with a very dense it's a very dense population. It's got a very dense population, per square mile, then you were going to see this. Because in Italy, as they point out, trucks were coming in and carrying away the dead. But let's throw it to the media. Let's throw it to the media right now, and I'll tell you why. I would like to believe it's not true that they're going to be burying the dead. And we have a statement now from two different individuals. I'm sorry, I can't. Because we've had this ongoing problem with the media and why we can't trust them. So again, We'll kind of segue off into a media criticism thing here. As much as I want to believe we're not going to do this, we just saw, an actual government official say this is going to be happening. Take a look at this story. Reporter to Trump. Why haven't you closed the grocery stores and pharmacies too? Why would you ask this question? I mean, I think it's a stupid story. That's why I didn't want to, lead with it. Why would the media ask this question? Why would a journalist ask Trump, why don't you shut down the grocery? But people need to eat food and get medicine. Or what are you talking about? We should shut down, and so literally no one can eat. People will riot in the streets. They say, from hot air, because people need to not starve to death. Actually, this question wasn't quite as foolish as it seems. Although the proper context doesn't help all that much. In last night's coronavirus briefing, one reporter asked Donald Trump why the government doesn't just shut down grocery stores and takeout restaurants and stop all commerce to kill off the virus. Trump offers a non sequitur to the question, perhaps surprised anyone would ask it. We can see this guy here says, as many people have already pointed out on here, a reporter actually asked Trump about shutting down essential businesses like grocery stores. Seriously, here that was. Question. Obviously, we know anyone can spread the disease, right? Unwittingly. So why even have a few businesses open? Why not just shut everything down? There are grocery stores that are open, fast food places. Why even take a little chance? Just shut it all down temporarily. Trump said, we'll answer that question later. All I can say is that right now, things are looking really good and opening up with a bang will be a great thing. And there's nobody going to be happier than me. They say it's a dumb question, but perhaps not for the reason most think. The federal government doesn't have the authority to shut down grocery stores or most other businesses for that matter. The administration has issued and updated guidelines for how to conduct business in the pandemic crisis, but it's up to governors to decide how to implement them. A handful of governors haven't yet issued stay-at-home orders at all, but most, if not all, have limited people to essential businesses, which includes grocery stores, pharmacies, and a limited number of other places of business. That question should have been aimed at governors, not the president, in our Federalist Republic. I don't think it was a good question at all. It's bad enough we had to shut down the entirety of the economy. It's bad enough we're being faced with the real threats we are. But let me link these together for you and explain why I wanted to do this. Whether or not it's true we're going to be burying bodies in New York, I'm inclined to believe that the actual official, as much as I don't like necessarily trusting the government, what we're seeing here is a nonsensical question that didn't need to be asked. Everybody knows the answer. First of all, they make a good point. Most people probably don't realize Trump doesn't have the authority to shut down grocery stores, and Trump hasn't instituted a national lockdown anyway. So you're asking a question of the president he has nothing to do with. But more importantly, why aren't grocery stores being shut down? Because people need to eat food every day. Well, not every day, but, within reason, you need to consistently eat food. And most people eat food every day. It's how they live. Now, do people need to go get their nails done? No, we can shut those businesses down. Why would a reporter ask this question? Two reasons. They just want to pretend to be useful because they're not. Nobody needs you to ask that question. It provides nothing to no one. More importantly, it's an up the ante. Almost, it's similar to the virtue signal, like I brought up earlier. It's similar to this desperate attempt to try and say something bigger and worse than someone else. Early on, they'll say, Trump, why don't you consider a national lockdown? And the president would say something like, we've talked about it. We don't want to do it. How do you then one up that person? What about pharmacies? Are you kidding me? Why would you shut down pharmacies? They're prescribing medicines to people who are sick. That's where you go and get the medicine. Why would you shut that down? You can pull up in a drive-through and the pharmacist can hand you a little bag. You're not, there's a risk of transmission, sure, but you'll probably be okay driving up, maybe going to a drive-through pharmacy or whatever. Grocery stores? See, listen. When you talk about the pharmacies, it seems absurd when we're in a medical crisis to say we should shut them down. Why would you ask that question? They're just trying to pretend to be useful, which, so I don't necessarily believe the journalists, and I don't believe them for a couple of reasons. It seems like this dude, Mark Levin, who came out, and he's been criticized before, saying we might do this. Well, that was a rather unexpected, candid moment where he just says, hey, we might be doing this. Now, a spokesperson is damage control. It's PR, so I'm not going to take their word for it. Let alone the word of a journalist who's relaying the word of a spokesperson. Why can't we just have the spokesperson come out and say what they, what they mean and what they need to say? What we get from the media is a grandstanding spectacle. There's no reason to ask for a journalist to even ask this. Well, I guess I'll give him credit. A journalist probably should ask for clarification. But why wouldn't the journalist reach out to Mark Levin and ask him, why are you saying you're doing this? What's been going on? What's the updates? Instead, they go around him to somebody else who's a spokesperson who probably doesn't know as much as the official does. Why are the journalists doing this? Controversy, confusion, I honestly don't know. They knew the spokesperson would give them something different. The spokesperson would do damage control. Mark Levin shouldn't have said it. Maybe he's being honest. You can trust whoever you want, but the fact is, it's very hard for us to understand what is going on at all. And I'll throw to Jim Acosta here. Take a look at that smug face. Washington Free Beacon says he's great at making a scene, not so great at actual reporting. The guy who asked Trump about closing pharmacies and grocery stores is nowhere near as bad as Jim Acosta is. But it's the point I'm trying to make. The journalists aren't trying to get to the truth, unfortunately. They're just trying to pretend to be useful. A government official said, we're doing it. Or he said, we may possibly start doing it, just to be fair. That's all we need. We don't need you to then contact someone else, a spokesperson who's not directly involved. That makes no sense. Why would you do that other than just to try and up the ante and pretend to be useful? Okay, fine. Now, I'll be fair. All right, dude, this guy is on the, New York City. He's the chair of the New York City Council Health Committee. Would he know? I'd imagine he would, but fine. You can argue whatever. Maybe they should have asked. Some people might think it's okay. I think it's a waste of our time. Hot Air says, in fairness, the question follows up on new guidance from Saturday's briefing, in which the administration experts urged Americans to forego pharmacy and grocery shopping over the next 2 weeks. Dr. Deborah Birx asked everyone to take a pause, even on essential business, while the Pearl Harbor moment comes and goes. Perhaps one can make an argument, although the reporter didn't make it explicit in his question, that this guidance should have been more of an order. If Americans shouldn't go to the store or pharmacy, why not just have them shut down their doors for a couple of weeks in a vacuum? Detached from law and in an academic sense only, that follow-up question makes a little sense. Of course, this has a common sense answer. Not all Americans have the resources to stock up for 2 full weeks ahead of time. They will still need access to groceries. And okay, you get it. I'm not going to make this one super long. You get the point. To an extent, I will apologize for roping in political and media criticism. But the reason I did is because, look, I read the story. I read the tweets. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I do this every day, and I'm trying to figure out what's true and what isn't, and what isn't. And I see this story where they're saying something truly horrific is about to happen, and we all want to know. And it's my job, or at least I try to, break down what's happening and give you a clear answer. I can't do that. Okay, so all I can really say is they might do it, they might not. What am I supposed to do with this? So I'll give you what my opinion is. I think they're going to do it. I think the government official was being candid. I think the spokesperson is PR. I think the journalist is just trying to muddy the waters. And I'm showing you exactly why I think that's the case. Because unfortunately, most of us don't trust the press right now. And that's a fact. Most Americans disapprove of the job, the media, of their handling of this. Most Americans, strangely enough, according to CBS polls, trust Trump a little bit more than they trust the media. I'm just trying to explain why. I don't like to have to frame it this way and bring this stuff up, but that's just the case. I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up at 4 p.m. youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel, and I will see you all then.